So today we're going to be doing a Q&A. I've consolidated all the questions that I got from you yesterday, and I'm going to be answering all of them in this video. And if you missed your chance to send me a question, just leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to them all. Or maybe I'll make this a monthly thing, and I don't know, but let me know what you guys think. And we have a lot of questions to go through, so let's just get started. The first question is, I have a Canon 90D. I can't find the lens for YouTube videos with a 1.8 aperture and very little zoom. Do you have any suggestions? Well, I don't know what kind of videos you make, but if you're looking for something wider, the best bet probably is the Sigma 18-35 1.8. Canon also makes the 28mm 1.8, the 35mm 2.0 IS, the 50mm 1.8. So those are probably your best options. And Canon unfortunately doesn't have any professional zoom lenses for their crop sensor cameras, and Fuji has their 16-55 2.8, and Sony also just recently came out with one, but Canon doesn't have anything like that for now. So for now, the best option for you is probably the Sigma 18-35. The second question, what is your ideal day for photography, as in how would you like it to go? Also, what do you do against going into this, let's call it, gear acquisition mode? That is, apart from longingly looking between your wallet and your new dream lens, camera, etc. My ideal day for photography, I'm a freelance photographer, but my passion is in street photography and photojournalism. I enjoy capturing candid moments of real people and the real environments, and that's probably what I'm going to be doing on an ideal day for me. I would just go out to the streets and just take photos all day. It's fun taking pictures of good-looking models, and they certainly make my job easier, but that's not what I enjoy doing, and that's not what I'm passionate about. I would much rather be shooting real people than models, but nothing against the models, but that's just what I like. And your question about the gear acquisition mode, it never ends, and that was one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel in the first place, because I wanted to channel my gear acquisition syndrome, if you will, into something more productive. And I buy a lot of cameras, but I also sell a lot of them. I'm not into the idea of collecting stuff just for the sake of owning them. And after testing, 30 different cameras in the past few years, one thing that I've realized was that there's no such thing as a perfect camera. There's no one camera or a lens that's gonna solve all my problems. And what's more important is to find your style, not a perfect camera. So what I mean by that is, once you develop your own style, then you have a better idea of what you're looking for in a camera and all the features that you need. So then you're not bothered by all the new things that's gonna come out on the market. So you have your style, you have your camera that you're comfortable with, and things like image quality or 4K videos, those things don't really matter. So if you're struggling with gear acquisition mode, then just really think hard about what is it that you're trying to achieve with your cameras. And once you have a clear goal, then gear doesn't really matter anymore. Plan on getting either of the new Canon R5 or R6 cameras when they come out this summer? Yeah, probably. I'm already pretty heavily invested into the RF mount system. I recently sold my 5D Mark IV, and I really didn't think that would happen for at least 2 or 3 more years. But I think Canon has demonstrated enough evidence for me to be confident with the RF mount system and their future. So I'm pretty excited about their new cameras that are coming out this year. And Canon, in the past 4 or 5 years, they've never been a company to overpromise and underdeliver. On paper, they've never been great cameras, but they've always been pretty reliable, and they always work when you need them to. But what's interesting is, if you look at the specs of the R5 or R6, they're off the charts good, and it will be interesting to see how much of that they actually deliver. So I'm pretty excited about their future, and I'll probably cover all of the Canon RF mount lenses and cameras from now on. If you could only carry 2 lenses for a trip, what would they be? I always fall back on my 24 1.4 and 70-200 2.8, depending on where I'm going, I guess. I'm actually going to London next week, and when I'm in London, I'll probably be good with a 35 1.8 80% of the time. And nowadays, unless I'm at an event or shooting portraits, I rarely ever use anything longer than 35. And with pretty much any cameras I buy, the first lens that I always get is a 35mm prime. And I'm also going to be driving around the countryside doing some landscapes and architectural shots, and for that I'll probably take my 15-35 2.8. And I'm also taking the RF 24-70 just because I'm reviewing that after the trip. So when I'm in London for at least 1 or 2 days, I'm going to be shooting with that lens, so I'm pretty excited about that. But normally for street photography, I'm good with a 35 or 28mm prime. Favorite spot to do time lapses? I don't shoot time lapses very often, but Vegas is always fun. I grew up there back in the early 2000s, and I go back there once in a while. What were your first digital and analog cameras, brand, model, and lens? I don't remember. My first analog camera was my dad's Nikon, and I forgot what it was called. I don't know the model name. My first digital camera it was actually this one. This is Canon Rebel XS. My wife and I bought this back in 2008 or 9, and this was my first serious digital camera. And before this, I had a lot of point-and-shoot cameras, but this was our first DSLR. What music do you listen to when you go shooting or editing, if you listen to any? I don't listen to music when I'm shooting, unless I'm shooting at a studio. I like to pay more attention to what's going on around me. And when I'm editing or when I'm just on my computer by myself, I grew up listening to guys like Daft Punk, Chemical Brothers, The Crystal Method, Fatboy Slim, Sasha. I can't name them all. What do you think about Capture One Pro for editing, if you have tried? I don't use Capture One Pro. I try to keep my editing process as simple as possible, and I don't like to change my workflow very often. And Capture One Pro didn't really seem to offer anything new for me, so I just never really tried it. Favorite feature in a specific camera model that can't be found in any other? I feel like most modern cameras are pretty similar. I can't think of one single feature, but if I had to choose one, I'll probably pick Canon's dual pixel autofocus, because I think that feature alone pretty much saved Canon in the past 5 years. How do you find time to plan, record, and edit videos? That has been my challenge with my own channel. Thanks. You know, managing time is always hard, and whether you're running a YouTube channel, starting a business, or with any kind of side hustles, time is very important. And you can always earn money one way or another, but you can't buy time. And one way to deal with that is to hire other people to do the work for you. But at the beginning, it's very hard to do that, so you just have to be very efficient with your time. I usually shoot my videos early in the morning or really late at night after my wife goes to bed, and I edit and write my scripts in between. And I'm not saying I do that every single day, but I might shoot all the talking portion of my video one day and shoot all the B-rolls on the day after and edit the videos on the next day. So I try to, in average, I post about 1 video per week, and I feel like that's pretty doable. I think one of the most common mistakes that a lot of new YouTubers make is they try to copy the big guys like Casey Neistat or Peter McKinnon, and they tend to over-edit their videos. And you obviously don't get millions of subscribers and views overnight, so they get burnt out and they get frustrated. And if you look at my videos, as you probably know, like I don't even have an intro, and my edits are pretty simple. And for my types of videos, I feel like most people come here to learn about some new cameras and lenses they want to buy, or to watch photography tutorials. They're not here to watch 5-minute slow-mo B-rolls of me on a skateboard. So I mean, I don't know, maybe that's what you guys want to see, but I feel like that's a waste of time for everybody. So I try to make my videos as concise as possible, so that also makes them easier to edit. How do you shoot well in dark environment? Can you shoot astrophotography with a cheap lens like 50mm 1.8? How to shoot well in a very sunny day, and maybe a little bit of Lightroom, Photoshop tricks and tips. Shooting in dark environments is different from astrophotography. If you're talking about just shooting in bad lighting in general, you need a good prime lens with a big aperture, and you have to slow down your shutter speed as much as possible. If you're shooting people and if they can stop and pose for you, maybe you can get away with somewhere between 1/30th to 1/60th of the second shutter speed. If you're using a crop sensor camera, in general, you can go up to maybe ISO 6400, and if you're really picky, 3200, and with a full frame camera you can probably go up to 12800. But that's just the general rough guideline, and there's really no one right way to do things. And for astrophotography, the lens is very important. The focal length doesn't really matter because that's really up to you. 1.8 aperture is good, 1.4 is even better. But what's most important is location. You have to go to a place where there's very little light pollution, out in the desert or in the countryside. You put your camera on a tripod and you go up to the maximum aperture and slow down your shutter speed and lower your ISO, and you just experiment. If there's not enough light, you increase your ISO, and if it's too bright, you increase your shutter speed. So you just experiment until you get to the right result, and you also have to make sure that you're in focus. Shooting on a sunny day, your shutter speed is your friend. If you want to stay in your maximum aperture, you just have to increase your shutter speed to match the exposure that you want, and you always want to stay in the lowest ISO possible. When you're shooting landscapes, if there's enough light, you can decrease your aperture to f8, f11, or f16. You start to get this nice sharp spiky sundial kind of flare, so that's also fun to experiment with. And maybe a bit of Lightroom and Photoshop tricks and tips. My editing process is really simple and boring, so I don't really have any tips to teach people, but if I come across any, I'll let you know. Tips for shooting at night. Also, what photography books do you recommend? So nighttime photography is different from shooting in low light and astrophotography. So nighttime photography is, it's fun because your focus should be on the scenery than your camera. So you don't always need a fast lens. You don't need the best camera for low light photography, because at nighttime, all the natural light disappears and all the artificial lights come on. So what happens is everything that everyone wants to advertise and emphasize become brighter, and all the unnecessary stuff become darker. So it's really up to you to how much of the shadows you want to pull out, or how much shadows you want to kill to really emphasize the lights. You can completely kill the shadows to create more dark and moody pictures, or you can bring up the shadows to create more brighter atmosphere. The photography books, I'm so bad with names. I don't know what kind of photography you do, but if you're a beginner, there's a book I recommend to a lot of people. I'll put the link down in the description. If you're looking for an inspiration, there's a book and a movie about Vivian Maier. If you haven't seen them already, I highly recommend it. And I also just bought a book by Stanley Kubrick. And did you know that Stanley Kubrick was a photojournalist before he became a movie director? I really like his style, and I think it really aligns well with the style of photography that I like to do. So I highly recommend that book as well, and I'll put the links in the description. What has been the most rewarding or enjoyable part of photography for you? What drives you to go out and take a photo or record a video? For photos, it's pretty simple. It's always the outcome and the people that you get to meet. I guess what makes it rewarding for me is that I like to take pictures of moments and things and people that no one really pays attention to, and turn them into something beautiful and fun to look at. But for shooting videos, what makes it really rewarding for me is all the comments that I get on my videos, especially my tutorials. People telling me how much helpful my videos were, and how they have inspired them to learn more and shoot more photos. And it's always nice to know that I can help people with what I know best and what I'm passionate about. So that's what really keeps me going. How do you do handheld pan and shoot? I don't think I really have a trick for that. I literally just handheld pan and shoot, and I just try to do several takes and pick the best one. Last question, are you buying the new X100V? I'm not sure actually. They are gonna start shipping around March, and I'll probably test one, but I'm not sure if I were to buy one, if I would choose the X100V or the X-T4, because the X-T4 is not going to be that much more expensive because the X100V is now $1,400, which is a lot of money. So we'll see what the X-T4 has to offer. So that's all the questions for me today, and if you have more questions, just leave a comment down below, and also let me know if this is something you guys want to see every month, and I'll see what I can do. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.